look at these numbers. Trump advantages on all of these traits.
Joe Biden is far less liked than he was 4 years ago. Just 43% of voters now view Joe Biden favorably in these states. And Donald Trump, despite everything that has happened, is actually slightly more liked.
As of now, things are looking pretty good for the election. There's all this talk about polls. And I don't want to, make you feel like it's nothing but sunshine and lollipops in the future for the presidential election. This is going to be a hard slog. But polls do give you an indication of where the campaign is right now and what might you expect because of what the American people are thinking. And poll after poll after poll right now is nothing but awful news for Joe Biden. Let's take it to yesterday's Meet the Press. Steve Kornacki, he had his jacket up and he had his sleeves rolled up. This is such a fraud. This is wardrobe. This is theater. There's no reason why he can't have his jacket on. You don't even think the studio is air conditioned? It's in Nebraska Avenue. It's right down the street from where I work at the radio station. It's a beautiful studio. I promise you. It's not so hot and harried there that he has to take off his jacket and roll up his sleeves. He just wants to show everybody that he's rolled up his sleeves. All right. Anyway, I'll leave Kornacki alone for a second because he's got some really bad news for Joe Biden.
We talk about the erosion for Biden, and now you start to see it. Look at these numbers. Trump advantages on all of these traits.
And I stop here because competent and effective, that was President Biden's, the crux of his campaign pitch back in 2020.
And we actually polled this question in 2020, and it was basically the exact opposite. It was Biden with about a 10-point advantage over Trump. And again, same with handling a crisis. Biden had the edge over Trump. And how about this? It's the former president, the current president. We don't really see matchups like this. Well, now we can measure it. Who has the strong record as president? And again, Trump outpacing Biden on that front. And again, you got to mention this one, too. Necessary mental and physical health. We asked this 4 years ago. It was a wash. It's now a clear liability for Joe Biden. So these are all troubling numbers for Biden.
Yeah. And by the way, they all sort of have the same explanation, which is, wow, 4 years ago, everybody thought that Biden was more competent and effective than Trump. And 4 years ago, they thought it was about a wash in terms of their age and their mental ability because they're about the same age. The difference now versus 4 years ago is we've had 4 years of this crap. The difference now between 4 years ago is that we didn't know for sure how Biden would be as president, and people were speculating that, well, we know what 4 years under Trump was, and, listen, the economy's good and all that stuff, but all these other things, we're weary, and a year of COVID, and it's just, maybe it is time for a change. And it can't get any worse, right? Now we know. And all of those people that made a difference in the election last time around, who weren't gung-ho for either one of them, but they said, what the hell, let's try the new guy for a minute. Now he's not a new guy anymore. We know exactly what 4 years of Joe Biden is. And we're being asked as an American people, since this is a re-election for Joe Biden, do you want 4 more years of the same? Do you want 4 more years of what we have right now? And the answer is not just no, hell no. Hell to the F no. Of course we don't. This election needs to be a referendum on Joe Biden. If it is about Joe Biden, he's dead in the water. And we've got another round of polls that show that as well. Take a look at this, because not only is this a referendum on Joe Biden's 4 years, but there's no mystery about what kind of president Donald Trump has been. This is the first time in like 150 years, I think. Millard Fillmore, is that right? Where we've got a former president running against a current president. You've got two people who have both served as president. So there's no guesswork here. You can compare Trump's performance as president to Biden's performance as president. See, 4 years ago, you were comparing Trump's performance as president to what you imagined Biden's performance would be. Now there's no imagining it. I mean, I wish we had imagined the last 4 years. So now take a look at this round of polls, taking that into account.
What are you seeing behind the numbers that might indicate why this is all
happening? Yeah, I think there's a lot of talk in this campaign about the lesser of two evils. I'm not quite sure that is an apt description, right? This is viewed favorably across Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. In the 2020 exit polls, what do we see? 50% of voters view Joe Biden on average favorably in those states, compared to just 45% for Donald Trump. Look at the Joe Biden trend line where he is now. Joe Biden is far less liked than he was 4 years ago. Just 43% of voters now view Joe Biden favorably in these states. And Donald Trump, despite everything that has happened, is actually slightly more liked. 47% favorable rating. So this isn't just the lesser of two evils that's going on. The fact is that Donald Trump is in fact better liked than he was 4 years ago and is better liked than Joe Biden is right now in these battleground states. It's pretty gosh darn clear.
Harry N., great to see you. Thank you.
That's right. That's Harry Enton giving you those numbers for CNN. You can't really trust him, though, because he didn't take his jacket off or roll up his sleeves. Isn't it amazing when you watch cable news and broadcast news and you realize they all pretty much have the same script? Nobody has any new ideas. They do nothing new or different or unique or creative. The only place where you've got the creative application of news is where you are right now. Streaming services like this, where people like me actually approach this stuff in a different and unique way. They're so boring. Every Sunday show is the same thing. It's just boring. But if I may, did you notice how he said, Donald Trump, even after everything that's happened, he's more liked now than he was? Let me rephrase that for you. Even after everything we've done to Donald Trump, even after everything we've thrown at him, even after all the lies we've told about him, he is actually more popular than he was 4 years ago. And it's because he's actually being seen as a victim, because he's a victim. Now, over on ABC News, there was a roundtable with Reince Priebus, former chairman of the RNC and former chief of staff for Donald Trump at the beginning of his presidency. And you're going to see Jonathan Martin of Politico chime in here. He's going to tell you the God's honest truth that wraps up so much of what we're talking about today. What are all these trials about? They're about sliming Donald Trump, right? And so why do they need to spend so much time sliming Donald Trump? Well, Jonathan Martin's going to tell you, because if this election is about Joe Biden, it's over before it even started.
In 2016, it was 24/7, lousy press, good press, everything in between Donald Trump. If you look at the press, 90% of it's about Trump. And he went through the last 3 weeks with 5 rallies a day and turned out one of the biggest upsets in modern history. When it's all about Trump, he's winning.
No, I actually disagree with that.
538 average has shown a bit of a.
I think the opposite's true. I think if the election's about Biden, I think if the election's about Biden, Trump's going to win. I think if the election's about Trump, Biden's got a lot better chance. And right now, Biden's problem is this election's about Joe Biden.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the challenge, right?
Those are the kind of numbers that make Biden very nervous. So
and
how does the White House
Michigan's
feel?
the most ominous number there.
Larry, you're muted.
Thank you, Newsbusters, for that video there. And yeah, that's 100% it. That is Jonathan Martin saying the quiet part out loud. If this campaign is about Joe Biden, that's bad news for Joe Biden. So they're going to try to make it all about Donald Trump, and they're going to try to hide Joe Biden. And if these trials don't do it, I assure you, they're going to find something else. Donald Trump has his day in the Supreme Court where he's going to argue about immunity in the Jack Smith January 6th trial. And everyone's saying, if he wins, then it's over. If he loses, it's over. Actually, my prediction on this Supreme Court decision, because he's asking for complete and total immunity, I don't think he's going to get that. But I also don't think that everything he's asking for is going to get rejected. It's going to be worse for Democrats. It's going to be worse for Biden and Garland and Jack Smith. The Supreme Court's going to say, the president does have some immunity, but he doesn't have total and complete immunity. So we're going to send this back down to the appeals court, and we want the judges to work this out. And then, of course, that will get appealed back to the Supreme Court. And there's no way there's going to be a trial starting anytime before Election Day, which is actually the worst case scenario. See, if the Supreme Court just exonerates Donald Trump across the board 100%, then they can make a case, it's Clarence Thomas, and it's all the crazy MAGA Republicans like Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh. That's what happened. No. They're actually going to be very judicious. They're going to say, listen, these are major constitutional decisions that are being decided here. We're not going to go one way or the other. We're going to send this back down and have it be worked out even more so. That's how jurisprudence looks. I'm sorry if you think that's a delaying tactic, but that's how our country operates. It takes years for these things to get worked out. You don't like it? Maybe you shouldn't bring unprecedented charges against a former president about a speech that he gave as president of the United States. Sorry, you decided to bring these charges. This is how things work. All right. And one more on this issue, because you kept hearing Reince Priebus there saying, back in 2016, it was 24/7, news blackout. All you heard about was Trump, 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 Trump. The entire thing was about Trump. And so he dominated everything, and that's part of how he won. Now, maybe that works this time, maybe it doesn't, I don't know. But my favorite thing, back to NBC Meet the Press, was Andrea Mitchell lamenting the fact, whining, crying, complaining that all the media wants to cover right now is the Trump criminal trial. I'm not joking. She actually said this.
The fact is, we don't know how that is going to play. Up until now, these legal cases have only helped him fundraising, made him, tell people he's the victim, energized his base. And so he's risen in the polls with every indictment. Now we're going to see him really powerless. The judge has been very effective, and how they handle the gag order is yet to be seen while Joe Biden is campaigning. The problem for Joe Biden and for the Democrats is Trump is crowding out, the trial is crowding out everything else. So Joe Biden goes out and does major policy things, the steel tariffs in Pennsylvania, everything else that he's doing, student loans breaking through a little bit, but everything else is crowded out.
Biden's doing all these great things and nobody's paying attention because everyone's focusing on the trials. The criminal trials that we encouraged and cheerled and promoted. And now we're showing 24/7. Why can't anybody stop us from doing what we're always doing? God, I hate these people. They're the worst. And today's only day one of this criminal trial. Oh, good Lord, just wait. But like I said, just keep focused, keep your head down. There's a lot of game to be played still. But right now, if you're just looking at polls, especially state-by-state polls, which I tell you are really the only polls that matter, if I can just go back to this graphic real fast, this tells you everything. This is the average of all the polls right now. And Trump and Republicans are notoriously undercounted in these polls. I mean, ask yourself, if somebody called you and said, yes, I'm from Gallup, I'm from the New York Times, I want to know who you're voting for president, you going to talk to that person, let alone tell them the truth? And in all of these polls, there's still like 5 to 10% who are undecided. Who the hell out there is undecided about these two people? If you're undecided right now, it's because you choose not to say out loud who you're going to vote for. And I promise you, the only candidate in this race that anybody is concerned about admitting that they're going to support and vote is Donald Trump, because there's no penalty to be paid to say that you're going to vote for Joe Biden. But Lord knows we've set up a culture and a society where there's a huge penalty to be paid if you admit that you support Donald Trump. Right now, as of now, things are looking pretty good for the election.